Hey guys, today I'm reviewing this Central Pneumatic air palm nailer. I was very intrigued by the possibility of doing some tight corners and that sort of thing with this. As usual, it says oil daily or warranty is void. Let me just give you a hint. Do not oil daily, oil hourly. If you're actually using this thing, oil at least once an hour. If you're using anything from Harbor Freight that is air driven, oil it hourly. Because I have actually oiled daily, and if you're using anything pneumatic, it will be destroyed by the end of the day. You know, even with a 4-hour session or 8-hour session or something, oil it hourly, otherwise it will just be destroyed. I'm not entirely sure why they say daily, because even in the manual, when they talk about continuous duty, it will specify like hourly for oiling. So definitely oil hourly, and the first thing I do is oil this thing. You know, oil anything pneumatic. So this is the actual palm nailer. Pretty self-explanatory. You set your compressor to 90 psi and hit it. Now what I'm driving is a bit unfair. These are 6-inch pole barn nails, and the reason is because I'm going through 2 sets of studs, and I just wanted a little bit something extra to penetrate into the existing wall. But in my defense, I actually did use 1/8-inch pilots to help these out a little bit, make it a little bit more fair, but I also wanted to show you guys what happens if you do drive something a little bit oversized. And let me first point out, it won't even fit on the unit, it's too big. Wow. Actually worked pretty well overall. Not too shabby for 25 bucks. So one of the things I noticed is you want to kind of back off. If you push forward too much, then it does these tiny little taps, and the little taps are much less effective for driving. So you have to kind of lean on it a bit and then back off, and lean on it a bit and back off, and that sort of thing. Now you can see it's not made for a head that large. This is probably made for, you know, 16D, 16 penny nails. And that's about it. Interestingly, either the hole wasn't centered or this is by design. I'm not sure which, but a little bit of a quality control issue if it's not intended to be offset there. This is a bit of a crescent shape here. So a couple more notes. I kind of bottomed out on all of these. The resistance became too high. I think I could very slowly knock them in, but it's kind of at a point of the return's not worth it, better to switch to a hammer. But my wife came out to inform me that the baby is terrified of the sound. So something to note if you have little ones. Apparently if you're nailing into your house, then it's a horrible sound for babies. Okay, so on 60D, that wasn't very fair. It kind of bottomed out, and really couldn't drive them. The last one I had to finish off with a hammer, but I think I might have been a little short on the pilot hole. So, but again, not a fair test. Let's try it on some 16D. But not bad at all on 16D. These are actually 3 1/4 rather than 3 1/2. I don't know why that's still 16D, but the vast majority seem to be 3 1/4 around here. But these were driven just fine. The only other thing I noticed is when this is pushed back and getting closer to the final finished area, that's when it speeds up and eventually just stops. So the amount of force is highest when it's not pushed in all the way. So if you're having trouble driving something, try to pull back a little bit. That seems to be the trick. The only other thing I would warn you about is when this thing is actually vibrating and going, if your hand is anywhere near there, it hurts quite a bit. I mean, that's a strong little hammer thrust that's going on. So definitely uncomfortable if you're touching the nail as it's being driven or that sort of thing. Not a big deal. I don't think it's going to hurt you that much, but it's a little bit more than you'd expect from such a small piece of equipment. Interestingly, this says 100 Psi Maximum, whereas another thing said 90. I think the box said 90. So anyway, for the amount of money and for the few occasions you might actually need something like this, it seems like a pretty good investment overall. Hope you found that useful. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. Thanks.
So in North Carolina, we have a state of emergency. Some areas were around 10 inches, some areas were more. I would guess we were over a foot actually. But what really surprised me, roughly we're talking about 5 pounds per square foot on this temporary structure I threw together real quick with the neighbor. And I mean, it's wood that I milled, it's ungraded. If I had to grade it, it would be some of it 2, a lot of it would be 3 or worse though, so not very structural. And it's held together with screws and fairly balloon framed. It's just, real quick to keep the materials out of the weather a little bit. And I can see some areas are a little bit buckling and that sort of thing, but the wood itself and the structure is holding up really well. I'm getting over the flu over here. Had just enough time to get OSB on the rafters and stick some lookouts on here and then tarp it. And then the flu knocked me on my butt for a week now, and I could say I'm still not really ready to do anything with this structure. I'm so sick still. It's sickest I've been in 8 years probably. Anyway, I thought I'd share that it's really impressive because maybe there are 4 screws holding these supports here, and then these 2x4s sitting on top, and then the metal roofing on top of that. I'm hoping I don't get any deflection in the metal roofing from the weight of this, but I really wouldn't have been surprised if the whole thing collapsed. Because screws, they're strong, sure, but all it takes is a failure, and the way they fail is catastrophic, unlike a nail. They don't bend, they snap. And that's why they aren't really used in construction very much, unless they're a particular type of screw. So check that out though, it's holding up just fine. And this I had no doubt would be fine because it's so overbuilt. That 2-ply LVL in the middle is rated for 11,000 pounds, or what would end up being like 60 PSF or something. I mean, you could use that as a floor basically. There's so much support.